Good morning and welcome to the 8:15 daily operations weather brief. This morning we have mostly clear skies similar to yesterday with some scattered cloud cover out the window here and some freshly diminished patchy fog that has just burned away in the morning sun. And much like yesterday, our overall cloud coverage should remain rather low until we start to see some a slight uptick in coverage once our peak heating gets underway and we begin to see some cumulus clouds building over our area. And then as for our temperatures today, we are on a similar track as yesterday, in which our temperatures are expected to crest this afternoon in the low 90s, and that leads us to yet another seasonally hot and humid day, and that will necessitate a heat advisory for later in the afternoon. Our winds for today should remain light and are expected to continue declining throughout the day and into the overnight hours and the early morning hours of tomorrow. And our rain chances do remain low for the day. However, the chance of a pop-up storm, especially in those early afternoon hours, driven by some more localized heating and some sea breeze movements, is certainly a possibility. So we'll be keeping an eye out for any sporadic development. And overall, a nice day, although humid. It's pretty standard, typical summer day here. Rain chances are low. However, today's weather will be very similar to what we experienced yesterday. Now, taking a look at our most recent surface analysis chart, we do remain in a similar state as yesterday with our synoptic setup. We do have an expansive ridge centered right across the central U.S. and over the Gulf Coast, and that's continuing to influence our weather here locally by keeping us hot and humid, with our rain chances being further reduced. And today we should remain generally dry as a result of that high pressure and as a result of it centering just to the west of our area, although as mentioned before, any developing sea breeze that gets underway this afternoon might trigger an isolated shower or storm, even despite the fact that the model probabilities are pretty low for any convective activity today. Now, temperatures will be ever so slightly warmer, maybe by a degree or two comparatively to yesterday, and that brings us right up to our heat advisory criteria, which should be going into effect just after noon today. And then moving on to Wednesday, we'll see an approaching cold front from the Midwest, and that's going to increase our southerly winds, and unfortunately that's going to draw some more moisture into the area, further making it a bit more muggy and pushing our dew points upwards, which will likely will increase our likelihood of exceeding the 100-degree mark on our heat indices, so that would necessitate a heat advisory once again. And then comes Thursday, we'll see some more so significant changes arrive as we see that upper level ridge begin to break down, and then we'll see a cold front move through later in the day, and that brings the chance for some greater coverage of both showers and storms moving through the area. Might see some flashes of lightning, claps of thunder, and that's through most of the mid-Atlantic, and that's where we're going to see our locally heavy rainfall chances get introduced into our forecast. And again, that's later on Thursday and into Friday. Now moving on to our current weather observations, we do have a scattered layer at 5,000 feet with unrestricted visibility and winds largely out of the west at about 4 knots. And our temperature is currently at 82 degrees, and we have a relative humidity of 87%, and that is slowly dropping. Now taking a glance at this morning's satellite imagery, as we see here that daytime filter coming across, we can see that scattered cloud cover off to our west there and also to our south, but overall in the name of upper level cloud cover, largely clear, maybe a few drifting bands moving through and some light convection down south and farther to the west, but in our general area, we're remaining rather cloud-free at the moment, and as a result, probably dry. Now, pulling up our most recent model run of today. This is the HER model, a high-resolution model on the 24-hour loop, and we can see that we remain largely clear of any green blips on the map here. So forecasting a rather dry day, as mentioned earlier, and most of that convective activity is scattered in nature and in further inland along the Appalachian mountain range. And then moving to our 24-hour risk chart, we do have a little bit of color on the board with our cloud cover, remaining largely scattered and light, building in through the day and then clearing overnight before we see some light cloud cover build in the early morning hours. And we're green for precip, although for our afternoon hours in the especially like 12 to 4 range, 12 to 6 range, we do see those chances, a very slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm. And then we do have a little bit of color on the board for our heat index reaching 100 degrees, and that heat advisory should be going into effect at noon. Now moving on to the short-term risk chart here. Wednesday, we can anticipate seeing some clouds early and then a clearing getting underway throughout the day, turning to a mostly sunny day and a high of 90 with greens across the board. No real issues foreseen for both Wednesday and Wednesday night, in which Wednesday night will be mostly clear and a low of 77. And then we move on to Thursday, and we'll see partly to mostly cloudy conditions building in with a chance of those PM, late afternoon into evening storms moving through the area, and a high of 87 as that front starts to impact our area. And that's going to conclude our 8:15 daily weather operations brief, and I'll be back at 10 o'clock with the 7-day outlook.